Alrighty, good morning. This is Dayton CFI from the LeMay Aero Club. We're going to be making a flight plan for you PPL students or any other students that want to be or want to learn how to make a VFR flight plan. Today we're going to be flying from Offutt to Columbus, and we're going to be making these legs. So to start, we obviously have our route right here, and then we have our nav log and our E6B provided from the University of North Dakota, which is really nice. You guys can use that one if you'd like. Highly recommend getting your own personal E6B to help you out. So if we go over here, we have our course here. I've plotted out some points already. We'll kind of get into that of how I find these points. So our course, Offutt to Columbus. So we need to start off with finding our true course, right? So we can see our true course I've already found is 287, but how did I find that? Well, if I go over here to our ruler and I click and drag from Columbus to Offutt, you can see I have a 285 magnetic, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a little video in there of how to actually find it as true. We actually have a ruler on the iPad that you have that you can find true, and it's just going into the settings and changing that from magnetic to true. I'm not entirely sure how to do that on the online version. I'm still trying to figure that out. But we have found that it's 287. What you want to do is you want to take your two fingers and you want to put them in the middle between the two. You don't want to measure out from Columbus to Offutt, right? Because it could just make things, it could come out as inaccurate, right? So you want to do the middle, right? So maybe from, if I grab my ruler here, from here to here is where how you're going to find your course. You're going to go over here and you're going to put it 287 into the navlog for true course, right? TC, all the way down 287. Now, how do we find our course route? How did I find 289 and 290? Well, we'll go back over to the flight or to the for flight, and we need to look for our lines of variation. Where our lines of variation is correcting for magnetic north to true north, right? And it's with our dotted magenta lines here. So we can see down through here, and I think it's just past Auburn, 2 east, and then over here near Grand Island or out this way, well, I think we're a little bit past, 3 east, right? So you have east and west. So east is least, west is best. Well, for our course route and how I learned this was we always opposited that, right? So east is more, west is the least. So 287 plus 2, 289. And what we want to do is we want to split that in half. So the halfway point between Columbus and Offutt is probably just a little bit past Wahoo. So we'll split that in half, and you can see that I have put 290 past Wahoo, right? So from Wahoo to Prague, I have an open spot here. As I actually, if you go back over to 4 I'd planned to have a first point at Millard, and my top of climb is past that, right? So we have Offutt, top of climb. You want top of climb here, TOC, and then from there your points, right? So we chose Wahoo, right? Wahoo, and then Schuyler, top of descent, and then Columbus. So we go back over our flight plan. You write down top of climb, Wahoo, Prague, Schuyler, TOD, which is top of descent, and then Columbus, right? And then we've wrote down our course route 289, 289, and then remember halfway point 290, 290, 290 all the way through. True course never, and the course route never changed, right? Unless we're changing direction, right? So if we change direction from Columbus to Beatrice, the true course is going to change, right? We're changing direction, right? Big thing too now is when you're choosing points, you don't want your points to be more than 25 nautical miles. The reason behind this is you don't want to lose that situation awareness while you're flying and they get lost. That can be lost within about a 25 nautical mile distance, right? So you will see today that my distances really don't exceed more than 20 nautical miles just to help for the situation awareness of where we're at. All right, going forward, let's move to our altitude course. So what altitude do we need to fly at today? Right, well, we can see that I started here at Offutt, 1,048 feet, because that's the field elevation Offutt, and we're climbing to 4,500, right? So anything 000 to 179 is going to be an odd 1,000 plus 500. So if we're going east, right, and then 180 to 359 is going to be a even 1,000 plus 500. Well, given that we're flying from Offutt to Columbus, we want an even 1,000, right? Now, why did I choose 4,500? Well, we need to look at the VFR chart too, right? Let's look at the MEFs or the maximum elevation figures, right? The big blue numbers. We can see that our tallest one is 2,900 feet. So flying at 2,500 feet is probably not a good idea because you would be below the MEF coming out of Omaha, right? So our next best option is 4,500. Not really a bad altitude to cruise at. You could go up to 6.5 if you truly want to. Just get an idea what the winds are doing. So we're going to choose 4,500 today. So we would put 1,048 up to, right? Draw an up arrow. I just drew a dash because I don't know how to draw an up arrow on a keyboard. To 4,500, and then we're all the way through 4,500. We're not changing altitude, right? So 4,500 all the way through to top of descent. And then from top of descent to Columbus, we go 4,500 down to our pattern altitude because by the time we get to Columbus, we necessarily don't want to be at field elevation right away. We want to be at our pattern altitude. So we can see that our field elevation is 1447. I round that up to 1500 and then add 1000, right? So 2500 feet is what we're going to be doing for our pattern altitude. So if we go back to our nav log here, we can see that 4500 down to 2500. There you go. Right, so we got our altitude in. Next thing we want is our wind speed, right? So our wind is, we'll go back over here. And at the time that I made the flight plan, I believe it was 150 at 10, somewhere along those lines. Since we're departing at noon today, right? Remember, you get the right time. We're departing at noon. I'm basing it off the TAF. 150 at 12, right? So if I come over here to my nav log, I've typed in 150 at 12. And then our temperature, right? So your TAF, your terminal aerodrome forecast, is not going to give you your temperature. So I go over to the MOS. And you can see the MOS has 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Well, I'm going to err on the side of it being hotter than cooler, right? The reason because we get worse performance when it's hotter, right? I want to err on the worst. So 32 degrees Celsius. So I come over here back to my live log and put 32 degrees Celsius. Cool. And then now we're going to go down the list of get our winds in here, right? So now that we're at altitude going to Columbus, we need to get our winds at altitude, right? So there's two ways to do this, right? First one is you could send this to the flights, and I've already done that, right? So on the iPad it's a little bit different. So I'd go over here to flights, and you can see we have off to Columbus. We're departing at 12:08 today, and you would go to the briefing, and we'll let this briefing load here, and the briefing will give you the winds aloft. So if we go over here to current weather or forecasts, winds aloft table, you can see at 4,500, 157 at 7, right? So this is a one way to figure out what your winds aloft are. How I do it, which is a little bit easier, is I split the difference between Offutt and Columbus. So from Offutt to Wahoo, I'm going to use those winds that Offutt gives. And then from Columbus to your new point of Prague are going to be the new winds at Columbus, winds aloft. So we do is you press on Offutt, go to weather, winds, and then you have an 11 a.m. mark, and then you have a 4 p.m. mark, right? And I chose, I believe, the 11 a.m. because we're closer to that, right? So 173 at 4 at 3,000 feet, right? I know we're going to 4,500 feet. You just kind of have, you can kind of interpolate, right? They're not going to change a whole lot between 3 and 6,000, so I'm just going to use the 3,000 today. Make it easy on myself. So I chose 173 at 4, and we know that from top Offutt to Oahu, we're going to use the same winds, right? So we have the 173 at 4. And then now we know from Prague to Columbus, we're going to use those winds aloft. So we'll go back over to ForeFlight. We'll go up here to Columbus, weather, winds, right? And see, we have 11 a.m. and then we have 4 p.m., right? Now, am I going to get to Columbus more towards 4 p.m. the hour or 11 a.m. the hour? Well, if I'm taking off at noon, I'm going to be kind of stuck in the middle as I'm going to be getting there about 1 to 1:30, right? So I'm just going to be err on the side of caution and say, I know the winds are going to be worse at 4 p.m. Up at winds aloft. So I'm going to use 149 at 10. So we'll go back over to our flight plan. 149 at 10. And then make sure to take the temperature. So 24 degrees Celsius, 24, 149 at 10 down here on your next point, and then 149 at 10, 24, right? So we got 3 different boxes of 149 at 10, right? Along that route, the winds really shouldn't change too much. It's not like we're traveling to 300 nautical miles where the winds can drastically change. From there, we want to figure out what our winds at the surface are for the last point, right? Not winds aloft. We're not going to be at 3,000 feet coming into Columbus, right? So Columbus winds at the surface, right? We can't use the METAR because we're not going to be there at that time, right? So we got to go back over to the TAF. And we see at 1 o'clock, which is about the time we're going to be getting there, right, off the tap, 17012 guessing 20. Now, we know we have a gust there, so I like to split the difference, right? I just don't want to put 12 or just put 20. So I split the difference, half of that, right? I'm going to probably put 16 today. So 170 at 16. Now, temperature, right? Remember, the TAF does not have the temperature, so we have to go over to the MOS, right? So you can see we have 11 a.m. and then we have 5 p.m. I'm going to interpret the worst one. We can see down here, they're expecting the temperature to be 28 degrees Celsius and 32. I'm going to take the worst of that. Remember, performance is worse at hotter temperatures, so 32. So back over to my nav log, and I put 32 in there. Right, so great job. You have now achieved of getting your course, your true course, altitude, and wind. Obviously, please pause the video. I'm going kind of quick, right, because I've already done this. I didn't want you to have to watch me type this all in. That's just too much for you guys. So take the time, pause the video, get this stuff in, re-watch the back side of the video of how I got this all, and we will talk to you soon. Alrighty, so now we're back, right? And I hope you've got all that stuff. So now from there, we're just going down the line, right, left to right. We need to figure out our true airspeed, right? So based off the book, right, we climb out at 79 knots, right? So right off the rip, you can just put 79 in the true airspeed. Now from there, we need to figure out what our true airspeed at altitude is going to be. So I hope that you guys have taken the Google Drive, right, and pulled the manual out and put it into your ForeFlight. I hope your instructors have kind of showed you how to do that. So you have a PH Warrior. It goes in chronological order, right? So each section is listed, right? So section 5 is your performance, right? So we'll come down here and we'll go to section 5, right? And you can already see I'm already past that section 6. Scroll up here a little bit. And when we get to section 5, performance-wise, it goes in chronological order, right? So we need to figure out, here's time, field, distance, climb. We don't need that just yet. So we have best power cruise performance, right? And what we want is we want best economy cruise performance, right? Think about at altitude, we want to be getting our best fuel flow, best economy out of it. Now you can see we have two different ones. They're based off the serial numbers. I'm not entirely sure what the serial number is, to be quite honest with you. I'm just gonna use the top one today, and we'll kind of talk about that furthermore. I don't think it truly really matters. I don't think the numbers are gonna really change too much. So we need to figure out what we're going to be doing airspeed wise, and then we'll figure out what we're doing RPM wise too, because these charts are all kind of jumbled. So remember, we're at 32 degrees Celsius, right? So if we scroll in here, you can see we have our numbers down here where my cursor is. 32, remember the top one is Fahrenheit, you can see, and the bottom one is Celsius. So 32, you can see 20, 40, so this middle line is 32, right? So we're going to draw all the way up to 4,500 feet. So 4,500 feet is right around there. You can see the line of 4,000 comes through up through there. This is the 5,000 line, 6,000 and onward, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw straight over, if I can draw a straight line today, right? And I just like to draw a line straight through, right? But we're not going to be going past really 75%. I think anything more than 75%, I'm not sure if it's on the Pipers, but I know for sure on the Cessnas that you can't go past 75%. You have to run at full mixture. So, and for the engine life, I just like to run it at 70% just to help out. So I'm going to go a little bit before that 75%, and I'm going to draw a straight line down, if I can draw one, right? So you can see, and this is really weird because you have 110 and then 120, and it's like you'd think it's 2, 4, 6, and then you're at 20. Well, it's really not. It's like it goes in, I believe, in threes. I'm thinking around 70% power, we're going to be at about 112 true airspeed. Now, the important thing is you need to read the notes, right? I messed this up earlier. True airspeed knots, note, subtract 2 knots if the wheel fairings are not installed. Well, we do not have wheel fairings on the Warrior, right? So we need to subtract those 2 knots, right? So if we go back over here, you can see I have put 110 in, right? Because 12 minus 2 is 10. 110, right? All the way through. Now you may be asking yourself, Dayton, why are you putting 110 from Tapas into Columbus? Well, I hope that when you come into Columbus, you're going to be descending, right? and a cruise configuration or a cruise speed, right down to Columbus, not maybe pulling it back to 90 and then descending. That's just going to take too long. You're going to be wasting your time. So we want to cruise in at 110, and then you can set up as you get closer to get into your pattern, right? So now we have that 79 and 110. The other thing we want to take into account, if we go back over here, is we want to figure out what we are going to be our power setting, right? So I believe I may be going the wrong way. These charts really can confuse me sometimes. I'll be completely honest as instructor and who has flown the Cessna the majority of their career. So this is your mixture range. You can do this. What we're looking for is our RPM range. So I'll pause the video here and I will find that for us. Alrighty. So we see I found the engine performance page. It is 5-9. Remember, we have two different of these because it's based off serial number. Once again, I do not know the serial number. Don't think it is really going to make a huge difference, right? So we have engine performance, gross weight at max, right? Best power, and then wheel fairings installed, right? There is no note down here to take off any engine performance for wheel fairings, so we'll just take that into account that we may get a little bit less. So remember, 32 up to 4,500 feet. I apologize if you're hearing my dogs bark. I have two golden retrievers. And then we'll come over. If I can draw a straight line, once again, just draw it straight through, right? And then 70% power. So you can see the 75, probably right around here is what we're going to be getting off 70% power. Straight down. You can see we're probably, yeah, probably about the 26 to 2650 mark. So I just say 2650. That's horribly drawn. But knowing that you're set it, and what you could do is you could come up here and we'll type it, right? Notes 2650 RPM, right? And that's what your cruise setting is going to be at 70% power, right? So we have figured that out. Now, since we figured, we're going to start doing the navlog portion. So we need our E6B here, and we're going to do the top part. So the 150 at 12. So we need to take that and mark it on our E6B. So the others in the online E6B that's provided from the University of North Dakota. We want to put the open dot on the 100, and then spin to 150. 150 at 12. Right? And then we want to go up. Anything we mark is true. So we want to mark our true airspeed, right? So up to 12, there's the 110 or the 10 mark, and then 12, right? So we've marked that with the red dot. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin this to 287 because that's our true course. 287 right there. Whoop. Having troubles with this. And then don't mind the blue dot here. And then we're going to move it to 79, right? And think, we're going to have a tailwind, right? Quartering tailwind. There's our 150, right? We're at dot, so we're going to count up, and it goes in ones. So there's the 5, 6, 7, so 98, right, is what I have. Because the open dot is our ground speed dot. So 98 is what we're going to put over here. Right, and then from there we'll go back to our E6B, and we need to figure out what our variation is. So we know that this is the 10, right? So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 2, 4, and then minus 6. So everything left of the line is minus, everything right is plus. So minus 6. So we'll go back over here to the flight plan. We need to put minus 6, right? And then 287 minus 6 should be 277. And then once again, we'll get rid of this. Once again, we have the variation too, right? So we have to get rid of this here real quick. Minus 2, right, off the variation, so 275. And I went down 10, so I need to correct this here again. I don't know why I went back 10. We're going to be at 281 rather. Minus 2 and then 279, right? So if I can get my math right today, that would help. Alrighty, and then going from true heading to magnetic course, we use that variation line that we have on ForeFlight. So if we go over here, we're going to leave that back to our maps, right? We have to find that variation line, right? And we knew that our halfway point was Wahoo. So we come down here. We knew it was just south of Auburn, minus 2. minus 2, so 281 minus 2 is 279. And then to get the compass heading, I don't have the compass card with me, so I'm just going to say it's 0, but you would need to look at the compass card to see what that deviation is. And then you would either add or subtract that, right? Or steer as they say it. So we're just going to put 279 here. Right, so now we have our compass heading that we'd fly off the compass. All right, the next one, 173 at 4. So we got to go back to the E6B. All right, put the open dot on the 100. Closer to me. Put the open dot on the 100. Right, and we're traveling at 110. Right, so I need to scroll this out one more time. 110, right? So remember, we need to find our true airspeed 110, right? Which we do, we know that. So go up to the 10, mark it, right? And what we need to do is we need to turn it to the 173 first, right? So I'm getting ahead of myself. So turn it to 173. There's 173. Go up to the 10, mark it, and spin, right? So we're going to 283, or 287 rather. Yep, 287. Just verify my numbers. 287 right there, and then move your index up to the 110 on the blue dot. We're using the blue dot since I marked the red dot wrong. And then there's your ground speed. Once again, off the winds, we're going to have a quartering tailwind, right? So that would make sense that our open dot's going to be faster than our true airspeed dot. So let's see here. 2 or 1, 2, 3. Looks like 114 is going to be our ground speed there. So we'll go back over here. We'll mark our ground speed as 114. There you go, right? So back to D6B, we know this is plus or minus, looks like minus 4, right? So we'll go over here, minus 4, so 283, right? And then we still are using that minus 2, right? So minus 2, and then 283, so 281. And then we are still using the compass heading as 0 since we don't know what the compass deviation is, so 281. Cool, now we have the next point. So what I'm going to have you do is I want you to kind of work these two. I'm going to work them out with you, but hopefully you're maybe getting ahead of me as it's maybe starting to click. Right, so we have 149 at 10. So we'll spin this 149, right? Or right next to the 15, 149. Move it back to the 100. And then 149 at 10. And we're going to use the green dot, spin to 283 or 287. I don't know why I'm getting 283 and 287 mixed up today. 287, and then move your index up to the 110, right? The green. And knowing we're going to have a tailwind once again because of where the winds are coming from. And then we know that's 5, 6, 7, so 118 it looks like. So we'll come over here to our nav log. 118. 118. That last one is 118. Alrighty, from there we need to figure out our deviation or our wind correction angle, right? So the green dot, so there's that 5, right? So 4, we'll do minus 3, looks like. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, or we'll do 4. It's closer to 4 there, so we'll do minus 4. And you can see we did minus 4 already. So 287. That would be 283 again. And then remember, we have that new variation because we're closer to the minus 3, the east minus 3, right? So now we're doing minus 3, so 280. And this gets pretty easy, is now you can just fill in the boxes because that's going to be the same as what it was, right? So 283, right? Minus 3 is 280. And there you go. You can see how this can become really, really quick if you do it right. And obviously the first time you do this, it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you a couple hours. But as you begin to build more nav logs, you get far quicker at it, and it take you an hour, 30 minutes, something like that. Alrighty, so we just have one more to do down here, the 170 at 16. So we'll go back to E6B. We'll spin to 170. Move it to the 100. The open dot's on the 100, and then 16, right? So there's 5, there's 6 right there, right? And then spin to 287 again, and then move. And we're still doing the 110, right? So we still have that tailwind on us. So 5, 6, 7. Looks like we're right on the 8 mark, right? So 118. Once again, we're gonna have that 118. Good. And then looks like we have a little bit more of a wind correction. So 5, 6, 7, between 7 and 8, right? We'll round up and go to 8 there. So we'll do, or we'll do, yeah, we'll do 8 here. So -8 is it's to the left, right? And that should be a 279 course. And then -3 again because of that variation. So 276. And then right into our compass heading of 276. Good. So the navlog portion is done, right? Or the correction side of wind correction and variation. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the distance and ground speed. I'm going to delete this 12.5s. That's going to change on us. And this 19.5s. That's going to change on us. So what we need to do to figure that out, right, is we need to figure out our time off and our gallons per hour. Well, how we're going to figure that out is we're going to go to the time, fuel, distance to climb chart. Alrighty, so now we're here at the time, fuel, distance to climb chart. This is a rather fun chart to deal with because you have to actually do some adding, some subtracting too with it, right? So, whoops. What we're going to do is we're going to pull out our thing. We knew it was 32 degrees. So 32 degrees Celsius. I'm going to change the color so it's easier for you guys to see. 32 up to our airport elevation, which is about 1,000 feet. So right around there, over, and just draw a line through. Right, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to minus these because we're not taking off from sea level and climbing to 4,500. We're taking off from 1,000 feet and climbing to 4,500 feet. Right, and this is all based off your pressure altitude. So you need to understand what your pressure altitude. Today, pressure altitude is sitting at about 1,000 feet. So what we'll do is we'll draw these lines down, right? You can see fuel, right, is right here. So here's the line, the fuel line right there. Our timeline is right here, and then our distance line is right here. Right, and these lines aren't very straight, but we'll work with them. So we're going to change the color here. Is now we're going to go same place we were, right? But we're going to climb up to 4,500. So right around there is the 4,500 mark. Draw your line over and just draw it straight through. And then from there, you can see we want to take our fuel of what it's going to take us to climb right there. And then we want our time, right? What we're not going to calculate is our distance, right? Our distance is going to be different because of the wind, right? If you can see off this chart, this is based off of no wind, right? We don't want the distance because it's going to be increased or decreased based off the wind, right? So now we have our line for fuel. We want to come down off the fuel line, right? The green one that I drew. You can see these are, I believe, in two increments. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yes, they are. So we can see we're going to burn 2 gallons, but we have to minus about half a gallon off of that. So we're probably going to burn about half a gallon, right? Because we have to minus what we took off from the airport elevation. You can see that's the line right here, which is just off the 0, maybe half a gallon or so. So we'll come over here and we'll put 1.5 gallons in. And then we'll go back over and we need to figure out our time. So our time looks like we're at about 10.5 minutes, but we need to take that off, take into account this line over here, which is about a minute or about 2 minutes. So 9 minus 10.5, 9.5, 8.5, so 8.5 minutes. I'll round up and say 9 minutes, right? So we have 9 in there. From there, we can now figure out our distance, right? Because we have our ground speed and we have our time off. So we'll go back to D6B, flip it over to the other side, and you can see we have our whiz wheel, is what most people will call it, right? So we're at 98 knots for 9 minutes. What is our distance going to be? Well, we can see there's 60 minute per hour or 60 knots, right? And what we need to do is we need to move this to 98, I believe it was 98, right? 98 knots, right? And now if you're flying the Cessna, that needs to be converted from miles per hour to knots, right? That's a huge mistake that students will make, right? So there's 98, right? 98 knots per hour for 9 minutes. The inner ring is always your minutes. The outer ring is your distance, right? So for 9 minutes, looks like we're going to do 15 miles, right? So we'll put over here 15. And there you go. So now what we can do is we can go back over to ForeFlight and we'll go back to the maps. It's going to make me leave that, which is fine as we've already got all our calculations. And let's measure out 15 miles. So we'll take our ruler, measure out 15 miles, and you can see previously I had made Millard a point, but we're going to be past Millard by the time we hit top of climb. Come in, and then you can take your marker and mark it. I don't have a marker available on the online version, so I'll just mark it like that. And then from there, I need to measure and figure out our distance from our top of climb point to Wahoo, which is our first point. So what we'll do is we'll take this, we'll measure it out. It looks like we have 17 miles, right? Which is just well within my 20 nautical mile window or range that we can be inside of. From there, you can see I've already put the distance from Wahoo to Prague to Schuyler, and then top of descent in Columbus will be a little bit different. We'll calculate that here in a couple of minutes. So now that we know we have 17, right, distance at 104 or 114 ground speed, we can figure out our time. So back to D6B, right? So 17 miles for 114 at 114 knots. So move it to 114, right? There's 114, right? You can see it's highlighted 114 for 17 nautical miles. Remember, the outer ring is your mileage, right? Don't get this mixed up. So 17 looks like at that range, we can round up about 9 minutes is what it's going to take us. So we'll go over here, time off, 9 minutes. And then now we'll do for 10 miles at 118. So come over here, 118 for 10 miles. Looks like 5 minutes. So we'll mark that, 5 minutes. And then for 12 miles, back over, it's already on the 118, right, for 12 miles. Looks like it's going to take us about 6 minutes. So 6 minutes. Good. So easy as that. You've already found your time based off your ground speed and distance that you're going to be covering. Now we need to figure out how far we're going to be from Columbus to top of descent, right? So what we need to do is we know we need to go down to pattern altitude. So 4,500 minus 2,500, right? So we'll minus that. The difference of that is 2,000 feet. What you're going to do is you're going to you're going to get rid of all the zeros. So you're just going to have the 2, right? And then times that by 3. Now, where do I get the 3 from? That 3-degree glide angle, right? Or glide path to descend. So 3 times 2 is 6 miles, right? So I know if I descend at a 3-degree glide path for 2,000 feet, it's going to take me 6 miles to do that, right? So I go over here to ForeFlight. I'll go up, and I've already marked it out here. So here's 6 miles, but then I need to get the distance between my top of descent and Schuyler, which is 7 miles. So I've already marked that in here, 6, 7, and 6, right? At 118, right? So now I can calculate how long that's going to take me. So what I'll do is I'll come back over to my E6B. It's already on the 118, right? And then for 7 miles, yep, correct. Right, it's gonna be pretty quick, 3.5 minutes, right? It's not 35 minutes. You got to use a little bit of common sense, right? So 3.5 minutes, right? So we'll come over here, 3.5, and then I would assume the 6 mileage is gonna take us probably 3 minutes, right? So at 118 for 6 miles, dead on, 3 minutes, right? There you go. So now we have our time off. So you can add that all together, right? If we were to add that all together, let me pull out my calculator here as math in my head don't mix. 9 plus 9 plus 5 plus 6 plus 3.5 plus 3 is 35.5 minutes, which would make sense because we're going to have a nice tailwind on the way there today. So we'd put that in the bottom box, 35.5 miles. There you go. So all we need to figure out now to end this nav log is we need to figure out our gallons per hour. So we'll go back over to the fuel chart in the manual. We're back over here at our chart, our best economy cruise performance, and actually they're very nice to give us our fuel consumption in the middle. You do have other charts down here that'll give you best power mixture, like the range at which you can go. If you're flying a longer cross country, you really want to chart these out to see how you're doing. But for this one today, we know we're gonna have enough fuel, especially for full, that we should be able to just use this and trust Piper, right? So knowing that we're at 70%, and we can see here at 65% you're gonna burn 7.5 gallons, and at 75% 8.5. So let's just interpolate that. So at 70, we can probably say we're gonna be burning 8 gallons an hour. So we come over here, come over to our chart, and put 8.0. And then from there, we're back to the E6B, right? So we're burning 8 gallons an hour, right? So put it on the 60, right? You're burning 8 gallons an hour. And then back to the flight plan, we're burning 8 gallons an hour for 9 minutes. So back to the E6B, 9 minutes. So we can see it's up here at the 12. Well, you need to think about this. Are we really burning 12 gallons in 9 minutes? No, that's just not possible at 8 gallons an hour. We're burning 1.2 gallons. So put a decimal in the middle. Come over here, 1.2. And then so on, right? We're going to be burning 8 gallons all the way through. So 5 and so 5. So keep it on the 60, 8 on the 60 for 5 minutes. Inner ring is your time, outer ring is your distance and fuel. So for 5 minutes, what? We can round that up to 0.7 of a 0.7 gallons because err on the side of caution of burning more fuel than not enough. So 0.7. And then for 6 minutes, back to D6B, right? 0.8 gallons, right there, dead on. 0.8. And then for 3.5 minutes. So this is going to be a pretty small number, right? For 3.5 minutes, come over. Here's the 35, right? 3.5. So it looks like we're going to be burning about 0.5 gallons, just half a gallon. And then for 0.3, back to the 6B, right? You can see point or 0.2 or 0.23. So we'll round up to we're at 23. So you can see how these numbers get really, really small, and it can make things kind of fun. And we're doing this for 3 minutes. So, oh, sorry. You can see how I've made a mistake here. So 0.3, right, or 3 minutes, right? We're going to be burning 0.4 of a gallon. Inner ring is your time. Outer ring is your distance and fuel consumption. So 0.4 gallons, right? You're not going to be burning 40 gallons or 4 gallons because that's just too much in the span of 3 minutes. So now we have our fuel. So you would want to add that all up. And we know we're only traveling for 35.5 minutes. So at 8 gallons an hour, are we going to burn a full 8 gallons? Well, probably not. So we're adding this all up and putting it on my calculator, and that's not right. So 1.5 plus 1.2 plus 0.7 plus 0.8 plus 0.5 plus 0.4 is 5.1 gallons, right? That we're going to be burning. Now, what I do is we burn about 1.1 to 1.5 gallons an hour on the ground from the taxi and the run up. So I'll put 1.4, and that's just going to add some of the fuel we burn on the ground for our taxi time and wait time. So I add that, and that's going to come out to 6.5 gallons that we're going to burn on the way to Columbus. So there you go. There's your nav log. Your nav log is complete. Now, what other things you can do is you can put in your leg remaining, right? So up here you would put in your leg, and the leg to Columbus here, we'll go back to the maps, I believe is about 50 something or 68 nautical miles, right? So you'd put up here 68 and then you would minus it through. So 68 minus 15, get that number, and then that number there hence minus, and that'll give you the distance, making sure that your distances are right. When you get into the flight, this is where your instructor should teach you that you're going to be putting these numbers together, getting an actual time en route, and then calculating that through. It's important before you take off that you put your time out in Zulu, right? In Zulu time, not in UTC, because they'll be asking you what it is in Zulu time. If you give them the normal time, it's going to be completely wrong. They're going to ask you that you're either behind, you're behind. So once again, these are I recommend that you put the departure frequencies in. Normally I fold this over to make it easier to write on, but this is up to you. This is optional. And then once again down here, a little bit optional, and you can take some notes on what you're doing if you're flying a flight plan. This is all really done in ForeFlight nowadays, but writing these out doesn't hurt by any means. I hope this made a little bit more sense for you guys. I hope this maybe cleared up some questions and made it a little bit easier, and that you guys can do this while you're making your own flight plan at home. I did this online. Please print these out and do it pen and paper. For stage checks, that is required, and for check rides, it is required to show up with pen and paper. So though you did it like this, they may not accept this.